It started with a key. A cheap brass key that didn't fit any of my doors. My brother sent it in the mail. No note attached. Just a strip of masking tape labeled in his neat, hollow handwriting. Storage unit. For safekeeping. I should have known even then what safekeeping meant in his vocabulary. He'd used that same word when he sold Dad's record collection, when he threw out Mom's recipe box because it smelled old, when he moved our father into a home for his own good. Safekeeping was just another word for erasure. Still, I drove out there one Sunday. The unit sat behind a chain-link fence at the edge of town, where the asphalt faded into dirt. The manager didn't even look up from his crossword when I gave him the key. Unit 317, he said, handing me a clipboard. Expired 2 months ago. My heart sank. Expired? He shrugged. Unpaid fees. Everything's been cleared. Standard auction procedure. The smell hit me before the meaning did. Dust, mothballs, a faint trace of cedar. My whole childhood had been condensed, catalogued, and sold to strangers. I imagined our boxes under fluorescent light, bidders raising paddles for pieces of my life, Dad's watch, Mom's garden shears, the shoebox full of birthday cards with childish scrawls that read, "To my sister, love, Ryan. Gone. All gone." The manager pointed toward a clipboard with neat handwriting. Sold to multiple buyers, contents divided. He couldn't give me names, just vague leads. An estate reseller in Denton, a local antique store, a man who ran an online auction site under the username Lone Star Treasures. That night, I sat in my car with the engine off, scrolling through old listings on my phone until I found it. A blurry photo of our old typewriter, my initials still etched into the metal side. $45. Vintage condition, works fine. I bought it back instantly. That was how it began. Not as revenge. Not yet. At first, it was just grief with direction. Every item became a breadcrumb, leading me backward through time. I started keeping a ledger in an old notebook, page after page of entries, hand-drawn. Sketches of what I could remember. Mom's sewing kit, Dad's old camera, the quilt we made together one summer when the air conditioner broke. Each entry had 2 columns, lost and found. The first filled quickly, the second, slowly. The first week, I found the typewriter and one of Dad's cameras on eBay. The next, I tracked down a box of ornaments at a thrift shop in Temple, my mother's handwriting still curling on the label. And the strangest thing began to happen. Every time I recovered something, my brother called, always at odd hours, always too cheerful. "Hey, just checking in. You still mad about that storage thing? You know I didn't mean to hurt you, right? I just thought it was time to move on." Move on. That was his other word for forgetting. I told him I was fine. And in a way, I was. Because the more I found, the more I remembered. Not just the objects, but the spaces between them. The clatter of Dad's keys on the table. Mom humming over the sink. The way the attic smelled like paper and rain whenever it stormed. I started to think maybe I wasn't just recovering things. Maybe I was rebuilding something he couldn't touch. But then, one night, while scrolling through another auction site, I froze. There it was, a box of photographs, labeled simply, "Unknown Family, 1980s, 1990s. My mother's handwriting again, our faces smiling through the screen, and the seller's username? Ryan Collects. My brother. That was when grief hardened into something else. Not anger exactly, something colder, quieter, the kind of revenge that doesn't shout, but writes itself carefully, one recovered thing at a time. I made a new column in the ledger. Taken. And under it, I wrote just one name. Ryan. I started to live by the notebook. It sat open on the table each night, its pages soft and curling from use. Coffee stains marked the corners like bruises. The columns, lost, found, taken, had become my own private liturgy. I wrote in it with the same care my mother once used. When labeling jars of jam, the same precision my father gave to his workshop tools, the ledger wasn't just a record anymore. It was a map. Each recovered item felt like an answered prayer. Each absence, a question I refused to stop asking. I didn't tell Ryan I knew. Not yet. That was the first rule I made for myself. Don't confront. Collect. I watched him online instead. He had turned selling into a hobby, a side business. Every few weeks, a new listing appeared under Ryan Collects. Old postcards, rusted tools, a box of records he found in an attic. He wasn't clever enough to hide the handwriting, or maybe he thought I'd never see it. Either way, I began to buy things quietly, through fake names, new accounts, prepaid cards. Each time a package arrived, I could almost feel the irony. A little piece of my childhood shipped back to me by the brother who'd stolen it. Some nights, I would unwrap each item slowly, deliberately, like an archaeologist brushing dirt from bone. Mom's locket, Dad's brass compass, the broken wristwatch that never told time, but always lived in his pocket. And sometimes, between objects, I'd find notes, my own handwriting from years ago, grocery lists, birthday reminders, scribbles from when I used to pretend I'd be a writer someday. Seeing them again was like finding an earlier version of myself, still hopeful, still believing in family. Then, one morning, a package arrived that wasn't meant for me. The address label was printed in the same courier font Ryan used, but the sender was someone new. Lone Star Resale. Inside the box was a photo album, the same one I'd searched for months. My mother's handwriting danced across the first page, for my children, to remember what we loved. The album wasn't complete. Some pages were missing, torn out. I flipped through slowly until I found the gap where the pictures of us, me and Ryan, by the lake, our faces red from the sun, should have been. In their place, there was a folded receipt from an estate auction. On the back, someone had scrawled in blue pen, "Bought the rest from your brother. Sorry if it means something." That night, I drove to the edge of town where he lived. The house was all angles and glass, new money in a quiet neighborhood. I didn't knock. I sat in my car, headlights off, and watched through the front window. He was at the table, laughing with someone, wineglass in hand. On the wall behind him, I saw it. Dad's old workshop clock, the one with the chipped rim. I'd forgotten to write that one in the ledger. It wasn't lost. It was on display. My brother had surrounded himself with our ghosts. When I got home, I opened the notebook and started a new page. What he keeps. I wrote down the clock, the quilt, the black and white photo of Mom holding us as babies. Then under it, I drew a line and wrote, "He doesn't own them. He only displays them." That was when I realized my revenge wouldn't come from taking back what was sold. It would come from showing him what could never be bought. Over the next month, I started sending him things anonymously. Copies of childhood photos. Notes written in our mother's handwriting, scanned and printed from old recipe cards. Nothing threatening. Nothing direct. Just memory, returned in fragments. The kind of things that linger. That whisper in the back of your mind when you're trying to sleep. He started calling more often after that. His voice had changed. "Do you ever feel haunted?" he asked once, laughing nervously. "By what?" I said. "I don't know. By the past, maybe." I smiled into the silence. "No," I said. I feel preserved. The ledger grew heavier each day. Lost, found, taken, what he keeps. It wasn't a record anymore. It was a plan. I began returning things, one at a time, not to my brother. Not to the house he built from other people's losses, but to where they belonged. The first was the typewriter. I carried it to the old library where our mother used to volunteer. The building had changed, the walls repainted, the shelves rearranged, but the air smelled the same. Old paper, dust, and sunlight. I placed the typewriter on a side table near the back corner, under a framed sign that read, "Donations welcome." When I pressed one key, A, it stuck, just as it had when I was a kid. I smiled. Somehow it felt right to let it live in a place that still believed in stories. Next was the compass. My father's. I drove 3 hours to the lake where we used to camp every summer. The cabin was gone now, replaced by rental docks and a bait shop, but the old trail was still there, worn down to roots and stones. I buried the compass near the waterline, in the same patch of sand where my father once knelt to show me how to find true north. For a moment, I thought I could feel him again, the quiet patience in his hands, the scent of pine and lake water. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like correction. After each return, I'd take out the ledger and cross out one word. Not found, not taken. I crossed out lost. The pages started to look less like an inventory and more like scripture. My brother didn't call for 2 weeks. Then one evening, his voice broke through the static like a knife. "Someone's been mailing me things," he said. "What kind of things?" "Old stuff. Family stuff. Pictures, receipts, weird little notes. It's creepy." "Maybe it's a sign," I said softly. "A sign of what?" "That the past isn't finished with you." He hung up. A week later, I received a message from an estate reseller in Temple. The same one who'd sold me Mom's ornaments months ago. He'd found something new. A small jewelry box, labeled Lot 42. Inside, he said, was a folded note with my name on it. I drove there that same night. The shop smelled of metal polish and mothballs. The man behind the counter recognized me instantly. "Thought you might want this back," he said, sliding the box across the counter. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, was Mom's locket, the one with the photo of her and Dad on their wedding day. And the note, "You always were sentimental. Thought you might want to buy this one too." Ryan, for a moment, I just stared at it. Not with anger, not with sadness, just realization. He knew. He'd known for a while, and now he was testing me, trying to see how far I'd go. I opened the locket. The hinge clicked. The faces smiled up at me from the tiny frame. Still young, still believing they'd built something permanent. I smiled back. "Okay," I whispered, "if that's how you want to play." That night I left the locket on his doorstep. No note, no explanation. I knew what it would do. The confusion, the fear of not knowing what was missing or found. The sense that someone was rewriting the story in which he'd always been the author. That was the point. Revenge, I realized, didn't have to destroy. It just had to undo. Over the next few weeks, small things began to shift. Neighbors said he'd been asking around, paranoid that someone was breaking in. His posts went quiet. His smile, in the few photos he still uploaded, looked rehearsed, strained. And through it all, I kept collecting, returning, rebuilding. The storage unit may have been emptied, but my world was filling again. Not with things, but with meaning. Then one afternoon, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid, me and Ryan as kids, sitting on the porch, legs swinging off the edge. Across the bottom, written in my brother's handwriting, "Come get what's left." The photo was 10 years older than it looked. The corners curled, the color faded, but the faces, mine and Ryan's, still carried something unguarded. Before the inheritance, before the arguments, before the idea that love could be something someone won. I stared at the handwriting. "Come get what's left." He didn't give an address. He didn't need to. I knew where he meant. The storage facility sat silent at dusk. The same one from before. The one with the rattling gate and the bored manager who never remembered me. The metal doors stretched down the corridor like ribs. At the end, Unit 3117, a new lock this time. but not a new story. Ryan was waiting. He leaned against the wall, thinner than I remembered, his eyes restless, hands buried in his jacket pockets. The fluorescent lights above us flickered, buzzing like trapped insects. "You came," he said. "You called?" I replied. He smiled faintly. "Guess I did." The unit door screeched open. Inside, the air smelled of dust and motor oil. Like the first day I came here, but heavier now, as if even the walls remembered what they'd held. He'd filled the space again. Boxes stacked high, each labeled with our family name. Some were old, others looked new. "I bought back what I could," he said quietly. "Figured it should stay here." I looked at the boxes. Most were empty. Some had things that weren't ours, garage sale relics, mismatched memories. He'd tried to rebuild the past, but like always, he'd only mimicked it. "You think this fixes it?" I asked. He shrugged. I thought maybe it was a start. "Why now?" He hesitated, staring at the concrete floor. "Because I can't sleep. I keep hearing the phone ring at night. I see things that aren't there. It's like the past is coming back for me." I almost smiled. "Maybe it is." He looked up, his eyes wide. "You did this, didn't you?" "The packages, the photos," I didn't answer. "I didn't need to." He laughed once, a hollow sound. "You've always been dramatic." "No," I said softly. "You've always been careless." We stood there for a long moment. Two people surrounded by ghosts. The hum of the lights filled the silence. The metal of the door vibrated faintly in the wind. I reached into my bag and pulled out the ledger. Its pages were bent, filled with years of ink and intent. "This is everything," I said. "Every lie, every loss, every piece I found." He took a step closer. "What are you going to do, burn it?" I looked around the unit, at the hollow boxes, at the dust floating in the light. "No," I said. "I'm leaving it here." I placed the notebook on one of the boxes. Its cover thudded softly against the cardboard. "You wanted safekeeping," I said. "Now you can keep it all safe." He didn't move. Didn't speak. I turned and walked toward the exit. Halfway down the hall, I heard him call out, quietly, almost tenderly. "Why are you doing this?" I stopped but didn't turn. "Because someone has to remember," I said, "and someone has to regret." Then I walked out into the night. The air outside felt sharp and clean, the kind that stings your lungs but wakes you fully. I didn't look back. Behind me, the door slammed shut. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. The next morning, I mailed one last package, an unmarked box containing a single item, Dad's broken watch. Inside was a note. "Time isn't yours to sell. Weeks passed. No calls, no messages, only silence." Then one day, I received a letter from the storage company. Unit 317, abandoned. Contents to be discarded. I smiled. The past finally cleared. I drove back to the lake that evening. The sky was pale gold, the water quiet. I sat on the edge of the dock, opened my hands, and let the last key, the brass one he'd mailed me years ago, slip through my fingers into the dark. The ripples spread outward. Perfect circles, then disappeared. I didn't need the ledger anymore. I didn't need the things. I had recovered what mattered, my memory, my voice, my peace.